Give all glory and honor and praise to Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem, Rakar Double honors to the elder apostles, great millstone, rule well, teaches this 100% truth. Salutations to the hopeful elect, beginning with the 144,000, the rest of the men, women, and children. I'm your brother Magan Shalom Martins. A quick video showing you that America is falling, and it's not going to be the golden period anymore where it was thriving. You know, this place is falling, it's crumbling. And again, this video is going to be short. This video is fair use. It's not for monetary purposes, but it's only for edification.
America feels like it's breaking. The media blames culture wars, gender, race, politics. But beneath the noise, there's a deeper fracture. While millions of Americans struggle to just get by, a small elite has steadily reshaped the country's institutions to serve their interests.
Yeah, this small elite is talking about Amalek, right? The small hatters. They're the top banking family in this world, and they control the politicians of this world, right? With a quick scripture here. This is Psalms chapter 64, a song of David. It says, hear my voice, O power. In my prayer, preserve my life from fear of the enemy. And we know O power is talking about the Heavenly Father, Yahweh. Yah means he, Hawa means to be or he exists. Verse 2 says, hide me from the secret counsel of the wicked. And the secret counsel of the wicked, we know the wicked, the so-called white man, Esau, Edom, pertaining to Job 9:24. And that secret council is the top elite, the Illuminati, is the top banking families. And they the Rothschilds, Rockefellers, the Murdochs, the Oppenheimers, the DuPonts on this earth. It says, hide me from the secret counsel of the wicked, from the insurrections of the workers of iniquity, because that's what they do. They sit and write grievous laws. They make all types of laws, and the politicians and inside of the Supreme Courts, all of those are being driven by the wants and needs of the top elites, the small hatters. Verse 3, who whet their tongue like a sword and bend their bows to shoot their arrows, even bitter words, that they may shoot in secret at the perfect. Suddenly do they shoot at me and fear not, right? Because, you know, Esau is blessed with the sword, you know, and so this world is their heaven, and they're the ones that's in charge. But pertaining to Revelation 12:12, the devil is mad because he know he has but a short time. He's fallen from his rulership, which is his heaven, and they're blessed with the sword, and they also blessed with that pen, right? So they control, they're the riches, and they're living fatly. But at this time, you see it now is that, you know, the economy is crashing in America, and they're trying to issue in this the New World Order, which is the mark of the beast, and we know it's going to be the RFID chip, the micro C chip, right? So this is why they are crashing the system nowadays. They don't care about getting the money or trying to get rich. They care less about getting rich. They just want everybody to get that chip so they can be gods over them, and they can be prepared to and they prepare to fight Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahweh Shah, when Yahweh Shah returns on this earth, when he cracked that sky with his angels inside of those chariots. Verse 5, it says, they encourage themselves in evil matter. They commune of laying snares privately. They say, who shall see them? They don't care, you know. They doing it, but see, it's starting to come to light now. We're starting to see the Lord has uncovered their leg, uncovered their bareness, their shame, their sins, right? So America is about to be destroyed. It's going to be utterly destroyed.
If you divided America by how much wealth each group owns, it would look like this. The poorest 20%, tens of millions of people, would own just enough to fill a single state, Arizona. The next 60%, America's middle class, would stretch just across the rest of the West Coast, from Washington to California. The wealthiest 20% would own everything else. And within that, the richest 1% alone would own enough wealth to cover the entire East Coast. It wasn't always like this. America once promised upward mobility, but over the past 4 decades, the income of the top 1% has skyrocketed by 574%, multiplying their wealth nearly 6 times. Meanwhile, the bottom 20% have seen their incomes jump by just 30%, barely outpacing inflation. Today, it's common to romanticize of a golden age of America. Trump practically won an election promising to bring it back. But are people really longing for a time of racial segregation and lower wages? Or are they desperate for a society where they once again feel like they have a fair shot? Because inequality isn't just about money, it's about power, about who gets to shape the rules and who is left behind.
And we know, again, that's the small hatters, the Amalek. They're the ones that's in charge of this earth, the bankers, the top elites, the Illuminati, right? They're the small hatters, the Rothschilds, Rockefellers, DuPonts, Murdochs. You know, they're the ones that's going to be. They're the ones who pushing that new world order. At the end of the day,
turning the American dream into a distant memory. So how did it get this bad? And can it still be saved? Here's how America got to its breaking point. To understand how inequality in America became what it is today, we need to go back to what many consider to be the golden age of the United States, the 1950s. For millions, the American dream was finally becoming a reality. It was a time of new cars, sprawling suburbias, and of course, economic growth. In the 2 decades following the Second World War, the US economy doubled in size. For context, that's a similar rate of growth to what we are seeing in China today. And here's the thing, this wasn't just money going to the rich. The explosion in economic growth came hand in hand with falling inequality. By the 1940s, the share of income going to the country's top 10% had fallen to the lowest level in a century. The country's middle class was rapidly expanding, and by the 1960s, 60% of Americans were considered middle class, up from 30% in the 1930s. Citizens filled their homes with new consumer products. TVs, cars, washing machines, once luxuries only the rich could enjoy, were now available to everyone. And while the country was far from perfect, the trend was clear. For most Americans, life was slowly getting better. Capitalism was working as an engine of prosperity for all, and when the economy grew, everybody benefited. But as the saying goes, nothing good lasts forever. And this is exactly what happened to America. By the early 1980s, things were beginning to change. A new school of economic thinking began to dominate the political landscape: neoliberalism. The idea was simple: reduce the size of government and allow the free market to unleash its full creative potential. By cutting back on regulations and taxes, the thinking was that the wealth generated by the system would gradually trickle down to the rest of society, lifting everyone up.
And that's when, Reagan, that devil, passed it into law, which is going to go into, but that's when the manufacturing jobs that was here in the major cities in America, like the Detroits, and the Jake was making a little bit of money, you know what I mean, during that time period. They took all the manufacturing jobs out of America, right? And they started putting them in third world countries. So those cities that had all these big time car dealerships and making cars and making these, all types of welding shops and whatnot, they left. And they left the cities decimated the cities, and they brought in the drugs, and this is the living condition you see Jake still suffering from.
In the process. And when Ronald Reagan was elected president in 1981, that's exactly what he did. The top income tax rate, which had hovered around 70% for decades, was slashed to just 30%. Trade barriers were dismantled, markets were deregulated, and globalization was championed, all sold on the idea that economic growth would make everybody better off. And for a while, it worked, at least on paper. Since the 1980s, the US has enjoyed the fastest rate of economic growth in the developed world. At the start of the neoliberal revolution, the average US citizen made about $12,000 more than the average European. But by 2023, this gap had almost tripled, growing to 31,000. But there was a problem. For the first time in nearly a century, income inequality also began to rise. Suddenly, economic growth no longer meant rising living standards for ordinary Americans. From the 1940s all the way through to the 70s, the bottom 90% of earners saw huge increases in their incomes. But from the 1970s, their incomes remained totally stagnant. So where did all the growth go? Mostly to the rich. Over the same period, the top 1% of earners saw huge increases in their pay. The middle class, once considered the backbone of the American economy, began to slowly vanish. But here's the thing, all of the indicators that are used to show economic success were still going up. The country's GDP was rising fast, tripling in size from the 1980s to today, and the stock market kept going, increasing by over 1,400% in half a lifetime. Even unemployment, often a barometer for the livelihoods of those on lower incomes, remained low. But the reality was that under the surface, the quality of life for the average American had remained totally stagnant for decades. Capitalism, once thought of as a system guaranteed to improve the lives of everybody, had totally failed. This is a really important topic, so I decided not to take a sponsor for this video. Instead, I wanted to quickly tell you about our new Instagram page. We're posting short daily explainers on economics, geopolitics, and how the world really works. If you've liked the videos so far, consider giving it a follow. Link is in the description and the pinned comment. Now, back to the video. America was built on a promise that no matter who you were or where you started, you could build a better life. But today, that idea seems to be slipping out of reach. Today, somebody born into the bottom 10% of US earners has only a 7% chance of making it into the top 10%. By comparison, an American born in the 1940s had a 90% chance of earning more than their parents. But for the generation born in the 1980s, that number had shrunk to just 50%. The country that once led the world in opportunity has become one of the hardest places to climb the ladder. Of course, this crisis hasn't gone unnoticed. In 2024, reducing the level of inequality polled as the second most important issue for the president to address. But here's the thing. For most issues, gaining enough public support is practically a guarantee of some government action. Enough people wanted civil rights legislation. The government produced the Civil Rights Act. Demands for climate change in the 2000s produced the Paris Climate Accord. And calls for healthcare eventually led to Obamacare. But inequality is different. No matter how much pressure the public puts on politicians, nothing seems to be done. Take this chart, for example. It shows what average Americans think the ideal distribution of wealth should be. The top 20% of the population does own a significantly larger share of the country's wealth, about 30%, but the wealth is also distributed across all income groups. Even the poorest 20% hold around 10% of the nation's assets. Then compare it to the actual wealth distribution. Almost all of the country's wealth goes to the top 20%, and the bottom 20% owns such a small share that you can hardly even see them. This disconnect is fueling a growing sense of outrage over the level of inequality in America. So why isn't anything being done? It all comes down to who actually has the power. Just take a look at President Trump's inauguration. This was one of the most high-profile events in decades. Presidents and prime ministers from all around the world were flown out to attend. But there was also another group present. Jeff Bezos, Mark Zuckerberg, and Tim Cook, the country's ultra-wealthy elites. And they were there for one thing: influence. In 2024,
Right, the influence. That's what they do. They're talking about the elites. The small hatters, that's what they do. They influence the politicians, and so whatever happens on this earth, they're the ones who's doing it. They're the ones who's pushing the buttons. This is Job, verse chapter 20. We're going to jump down. We'll start at verse 4. It says, "Knowest thou not this of old, since man was placed upon the earth, that the triumphant of the wicked is short, and the joy of the hypocrite but for a moment." Right, and we know the wicked is so-called white man, Esau, Edom. You know, this triumphant being the ruler of this earth is really a short period of time compared to what's about to happen when Yahweh Shah returns. You know, they're going to be going to slavery for 1,000 years, and they're going to be destroyed forever and ever, ever. Right? Verse 6, it says, "Thou though his excellency mount up to the heavens, and his head reach into the clouds, yet he shall perish forever like his own dung. That which have seen him, they which have seen him shall say, where is he? He shall fly away as a dream and shall not be found. Yeah, he shall be chased away as a vision of the night. And that's what's going to happen with Esau, man. That's the only way this place on earth is going to be put into rightful order, is for the downfall of America and the downfall of Esau Edom. Hope you was edified with that. I'm going to say shalom.